hello, Courier Nation. Welcome to the Deliver on Your Business podcast, where you are the boss. Each week, we talk about how to make the most of your business as an independent contractor, as a courier delivering for gig economy apps like Grubhub, Doordash, Postmates, Uber Eats, and so many others. Welcome back, Courier Nation. It is good to be back. It is good to have you back, and it's just good to be doing another episode of the Deliver on Your Business podcast. I'm glad you could join me. Let's dive in here. The first thing that I usually do now the last several weeks has been just talk about some things, some news, whatever's going on before diving into the subject. This week, I want to talk about something that I brought up about, I think it was 3 episodes ago, that talked about, I'm thinking of putting together this class. And I'm working on that right now. You'll have to forgive the dogs. The mailman's outside. And I'm on my 3rd take on this already. And so I'm not going to go back and re-record. If you did hear the dogs in the background, well, bark away, puppies. You get a bark. And I'm going to keep recording here. So anyway, back to where I was, that I'm working on this class right now. It's going to be a 31-day email course. And so everything will be sent out by email. I'm hoping to kind of throw in some videos on some of them, and I want to throw in maybe some homework or something too, some active steps that you can do. And the idea is 31 days to develop a business attitude and 31 days to improve your profits as a delivery professional. And so I still haven't got it all nailed down yet. I'm kind of in process of doing it, and I'm trying to do that and still do content on this and still do deliveries. And oh, by the way, we're trying to put flooring down in the basement, and I'm not a pro at that. I should be hiring somebody to do that, to be honest. That's an aside. But anyway, so I'm right now I've got it all kind of outlined and pretty much know what I'm going to be doing with it, but I'm still working on a couple of the little pieces as far as how I want to deliver that. I want to do something with a community where we can get into discussions about that. I'd like to set up a couple of live Q&A sessions as part of it, but then also have some places where you can kind of interact with some of those steps that I want to talk about, some of that homework, different things like that. So we can kind of track how everybody's doing as they go through that, So stay tuned. I'm hoping to get you an official announcement here in the next week and a half, something like that. And then hopefully have this thing launched by, here, but within the next 2 weeks or so. So stay tuned. We'll put some stuff out as far as, signing up for that and how you can get into that if you're interested in that. So on to today's topic. 2 weeks ago, I talked about what is it like to deliver for Uber Eats. And there was a point in there where I kind of played the little ping, the little ting-ting that you get whenever you're getting an order. And nobody tell Mike Biscaglia from the Mike Delivers podcast that I stole that from him. But, I thought about, okay, we're doing DoorDash this week. What is it like to deliver for DoorDash? And I thought, well, I'd play the notification thing from DoorDash. Well, okay, it doesn't work that well. I'm a little nervous about doing that. And I'll tell you why. Here's the thing. With the DoorDash, they don't have kind of their own sound to it. What they do is it kind of kicks off whatever your default notification sound is. But even that, I don't want to do that because I'm a little scared of what happens, because what will happen probably is it'll start playing that and then it'll freeze and it'll just keep playing it over and over and over, whether you clear it or not. It'll just keep playing it. And then it's going to kick everything offline, because that's what the DoorDash app does when I get an offer from them, is it kicks off my podcasts or my streaming stuff or whatever and knocks it offline so it can keep doing this chinging and tinging and chinging and yeah, we're not going to do that. So anyway, on to this week's topic. What is it like to deliver for DoorDash? I may be giving a little bit too much too early. You can probably tell there's some things that drive me nuts about DoorDash. Here's the deal with all of these apps, with all these delivery apps. I love them and I hate them. There's stuff I love about them and there's stuff that drives me nuts. Anyway, I did a series last fall that got into each one of these apps. So there was a podcast episode and a blog post about each one, about are they a good option for doing delivery? And those got into kind of a bigger picture of the app itself and all the different aspects of it. And then I wrapped it up with a comparison of those. Well, these last 3 weeks I've been doing a series, but it's more like about what is it like to deliver for them, and not so much getting into some of the big picture. Some of the stuff is probably a repetition from those episodes back in the fall, and some of the stuff is what I wanted to do this time around, though, was more experiential. So 2 weeks ago, I did Uber Eats. That was episode 80. In episode 81 last week, we did Grubhub, and this week, episode 82, we are on what is it like to deliver with Doordash. So like with all the other episodes that I did, we'll talk about things like, we'll start off with what it's like just getting started, getting signed up with them. In case you have not delivered with Doordash, maybe you're brand new and haven't delivered with anybody, or you have signed up with somebody else. With Doordash, you just go to their website, you sign up, you fill out your information, and they're going to run a background check. So with Doordash, the requirements are pretty simple. You've got to be 18 years old. You've got to have a way to get around. It's either car or you can do it with bike. They've got a bicycle mode, scooter mode, things like that. You've got to have a driver's license with, if you're driving, with at least 1 year of driving experience, and you've got to have insurance with your name on the policy. And basically what's going to happen is you sign up and you've got to pass a background check. And if they don't find any issues on your background check, you're good to go. Now, like a lot of companies, when you sign up, sometimes you're better off signing up with a referral link because they'll give you a little bonus. Right now, I'll put a link in the show notes with my referral link. You can click on that and sign up through that. And what will happen is it'll pop up and it'll tell you what the bonus is if there is one. It'll say, you've been referred by Ronald Walter. You can make $50 extra if you completed 220 deliveries by September 26th. That's what it says today if you click on my link. And so, it's pretty simple. It's kind of like I wish that I had signed up through a referral link because that would have been some extra money. I would have delivered enough to do that. It's a big question. Is it worth chasing that link? It just depends on how much you plan on delivering. Because here's the deal: $220 or 220 deliveries. That is, that's probably, if you're just getting started, you're probably looking at 100 to 120 hours worth of delivery time. And are you willing to put $100 to $120 delivery time into that? And is it worth doing that for $50? If you're going to be really stretching it, if you're going to really be busting your butt, I'm not sure it's worth it. Because you know what? $220 220 deliveries for $50, that's 22 cents extra per delivery. I know I probably shouldn't talk you out of it or whatever. It's like if you're going to go out and you're going to do the deliveries and you're going to deliver enough, yeah, hey, that's a great deal. It's $50 extra is $50 extra. But you probably get a feel for how I feel about Doordash and some of the incentives they offer. And this is kind of right up there. It's like they make it look like an awful lot. And when you break it down, it's like, yeah, they're really not giving you that much. But still, $50 extra. And it's really up to you whether or not it makes sense to chase that. To me, it's more about you want to get on with Doordash because I think you want to get on with all of these apps, or to at least get on with 2 or 3 of them, just because you have some options, And whether or not Doordash ever becomes your main option, for a lot of people, they are. For me, they're kind of my number 3. That's where they stand with me right now. Things change. But anyway, you get signed up. You pass the background check, and a lot of times within 24 or 48 hours, all of that. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, especially when they're really flooded with people signing up. And in the middle of the pandemic, and maybe right now as that $600 a week expires off of the federal extra unemployment, you're probably going to start seeing a lot of people starting to sign up with Doordash. So you just got to decide, does it make sense or whatever? And you do your sign up either through a referral link. If you want to, you're certainly welcome to use mine. I do sometimes receive some money depending on which market you're in if you complete all those deliveries. But either way, whether or not you go after those $220 deliveries within that time frame, that's up to you. The other part of that is that the one thing you got to be aware of with Doordash is sometimes they take their time getting you onboarded. Sometimes it can be 2 to 3 weeks before you're actually able to do your first delivery. And that 220 deliveries that you've got to do, the clock's already ticking on that. They start with the moment you start the sign-up process, not the time you start delivering. So now all of a sudden, instead of having 60 days, you might be at 40 days, something like that. So And then, and if you're down to 5 weeks or 6 weeks, then all of a sudden 100 and some hours might not fit for you. You just got to kind of be aware of that. Most of the time I hear a lot of people really trying to push you into signing up for that referral thing, but they don't get into what does it really mean. So that's what I wanted to cover there. When I signed up, I had to go drive to a Starbucks clear across town and do an orientation. And in that orientation, it was basically, oh, here's your bag, and here's a payment card that you can use. Let's just make sure that hooked up on your phone. And I'm like, I just drove 45 minutes for this. You could have sent it to me, Since then, I think Doordash has figured that out more, that they could just send it to you. They haven't been doing in-person, especially with the pandemic, they haven't been doing as much in-person orientation, but they send you your bag, they send you your payment card, and away you go. Either way, once you get started, now you can go out and do deliveries. With Doordash, it's a matter of you get logged in, but it's maybe a little more involved. There's a couple of other apps you can just kind of click a go button and then you start getting orders. With Doordash, you kind of have to get onto a scheduled slot. You have to log into a particular time and a particular zone. What happens is Doordash breaks your city down into smaller zones, and so you go to a particular zone, and you can either schedule ahead of time and then you go to that zone for that particular zone, like, downtown or, a particular suburb or something like that. And it's all kind of clearly marked out what the boundaries are and everything. So you schedule yourself or you go into that zone, and if there are available slots, then you can click on a button that says Dash Now. And with that Dash Now, once you click on that, and it'll ask you, how long do you want to stay on here? And so you click your end time, and sometimes it'll only give you like a half hour to an hour, and sometimes you could say, I'm going to be here all day. And so you kind of you set your schedule that way. What happens is basically you have to be on a schedule with Doordash. The Dash Now is kind of a workaround to make it sound a little bit like some of the other apps, but you're still going to be on a schedule. You're still what happens is when Dash Now is available, that means that what they've done is they've broken down each zone, and they've got a feel for how many people they're going to need at whatever time of the day in each of those zones. And so the whole idea of scheduling is you can reserve a spot, one of those spots there. It's kind of like you got a slot for each person. You can reserve that by scheduling, or if all of those spots are not taken up, then you can click on Dash Now. You go and you log in and you get a map. And I'll have a screenshot of a map up on the associated blog post here. If you go to entrecourier.com/82, you can see the screenshot. And it'll show you the different zones. And some of them show up as pink, and some of them show up as gray. If it's pink or a darker color of pink or a red, that means that you can start delivering right away, right there. If it is gray, you can't get on. There's an exception, but normally you can't get on. So that's kind of what it is. You got to find your zone. You got to find a place that's available. So it's a little harder with Doordash to kind of just go somewhere and just jump in and deliver. It's a little more involved, but you grab your schedule slot and you log in and away you go. The other screenshot that you'll see right after that map screen is kind of more the scheduling. And that is what you can do is you can click on schedule, and you could do this a couple days ahead of time. You could do it the morning. You could do it right when you're getting ready to start. Just kind of depends on what's available. And then you can scroll through and you can see what time slots are available for each zone. And so I'll show you a screenshot of that as well, so you get an idea of what that scheduling is like. But, whether or not you schedule ahead of time or you just Dash Now, you get in, you grab your slot, and now you're ready to take orders. And so we'll talk about those delivery offers that come from Doordash. The beautiful thing with Doordash is they give you so much more information than just about anybody else. Uber Eats is kind of caught up with them, but there's some stuff that Doordash does. It's just fantastic. You get, just like everybody else, you'll get your chime or your notification sound, and their app drives me crazy. I don't know if it's just on Android. I don't know if it does this on the iPhone, but I know on the Android, it's like it freezes the notification sound, that default notification sound. It'll just play that and chime that over and over and over until you do something. And sometimes even when you do something, it keeps doing that. And I've had times I've had to shut my phone off and reboot it. There are a lot of glitches with Grubhub's app. We'll get into those a little bit more. But anyway, you get the sound. It says, hey, you've got a delivery offer. They'll send you a text. Sometimes those texts run a little bit behind. You get an offer, and 10 minutes later you get the text. So, but, they kind of send you notifications to let you know, hey, you've got this offer. You pull up the offer, and there's a great amount of information, and they do impress me with what they've done there. You have a map, just like everybody else, but I seriously think that the color scheme that they use stands out maybe even better than Uber Eats does. And so you can tell very clearly where the restaurant is and where the customer is on the map. And then they will tell you that, they'll give you the name of the restaurant. They will tell you how many items are on the order. They will tell you how many miles you will have to drive to complete that. That includes your miles to the restaurant, and then from the restaurant to, it doesn't break those down, but it's like those total miles from where you start by the time you get to the restaurant and then you get to the customer. It's going to take you, 2.9 miles or whatever. I'll have a screenshot of an offer there so you can look at that and see what's on there. It'll give you a price. And it'll say under the price, it says, the $7, let's say, on the screenshot that I've got, it says includes DoorDash pay and customer tip. And then parentheses below that, it says total may be higher. We'll get into that in a moment. It also will tell you the deliver by time. It'll say deliver by 6:11 p.m. Now, one thing that DoorDash has that nobody else has, if you're on Android, is something called the floating widget. And that's like another program or something like that if you're not in the app, you can click on that widget and or just click on a little icon there. And what it will do is it'll give you two different things of information. One of those is it will tell you the address of the customer. And instead of just a map, you can actually pull up the address. The other thing you can do is you can tap on a little button in that, and it'll tell you the stuff that is in the menu item or on the order. So you can see right away what you're going to be delivering. And that can be helpful information in some situations when you're trying to make a decision. So I think DoorDash probably does as good a job as anybody, maybe the best job of anybody. Uber Eats has gotten real close. They do a couple things that DoorDash doesn't do, but they try and give you the information that you need to make a decision on whether or not the order is worth taking. Now, when it comes to deciding what orders you should take and which ones you should reject, there are a lot of different theories, a lot of different ideas about that. Kind of a common one, and I think it's because they tell you how many miles you're going. A common one with a lot of people in DoorDash is, well, it's got to pay $1 a mile or better. And here's my opinion on that. $1 a mile is not enough. It's just not. It's very rarely enough. I use what I call a 50-cent rule. It's got to pay me 50 cents a minute or better. Because that kind of keeps me on track of what my goals are of trying to get, $30 an hour before my expenses. And so when you're using that as a rule, it's really simple. It really comes down to simple. I double the amount that they say that they're going to pay. And if I can get it done within that many minutes, then okay, I'll take it. So like the example of the screenshot that's on there is a McDonald's order that is paying $7. So I look at that and I say, can I get that done in 14 minutes? So you double the 7, you get 14. Can I get that done in 14 minutes? If I can get that done in 14 minutes or very close, yeah, I'm going to take that. And if I can't, I pass. And that's where it really kind of throws things off, where I'm turning down $15 deliveries because I'm sure that I can't get it done in 30 minutes. I'm doubling that up because it doesn't meet that 50-cent rule. So, and DoorDash gives you a couple of clues, actually, of how long a delivery can take. Some of it is just out of experience. You get a feel for how long it takes. When you look at the distance that they tell you, 2.9 miles, that's telling me that usually it's going to be about 10 minutes of driving time. So, there's 10 minutes gone out of a 14-minute delivery. Can I get through the restaurant in 4 minutes? And oh, by the way, also get it dropped off with the customer in that quick amount of time. And so if you want a shortcut with DoorDash, you can just look at how far away that deliver by time is and compare that to what time it is. So in the screenshot that I've got there, the order came in at 5:55 and the deliver by time was 6:11. I think that varies by market. I hear people in some markets that they say, yeah, that deliver time is always a lot later than what it really should be. I'm finding in my market that, boy, I go right to the restaurant, I get the food, I get right to the customer, and I'm real close to that deliver time. So I found that to be pretty accurate where I'm at. It really depends on where you are and what your experience is. How reliable is that deliver by time as far as being kind of an estimate of when you can be done? To try and figure out how long is it going to take you to do that delivery, and then make your decisions from there. Now, one thing to understand with offers from DoorDash is what you see is not always what you get, but most of the times it is. And this is where I'm talking about that little parentheses that says the total may be higher. Do not chase that carrot. That's my advice. Do not chase that carrot. Do not go after something that you normally would not take solely on the idea that, it might pay higher, because more often than not, it does not. There are times, and this is where I think it is actually an intentional deception by DoorDash. There are times that they do pay more than what they said. Every once in a while, and it usually is something that is a very high tip. My experience has always been that it's been on a delivery that already was, a little bit on the higher end. In fact, it is almost always on something that the offer amount is $8.50. That's at least in my market. Some markets are going to be a little bit different. But the thing is they like to hide that extra amount sometimes, and every once in a while pay you more than what they threw out there. And it's all psychological. It is all manipulation. It is all to plant this idea in your mind that when you get a $3 offer, you start thinking, I might get a little bit more. And what I'm going to tell you is most of the time when you chase after something because it might pay more, it's not going to. So don't chase that carrot. You are very, very rarely going to catch it. And my rule, I think, when it comes to that is I've got to be okay with what they are offering. If that $7 is good enough, then it's good enough. And then if it pays more, that's awesome. But it does mean that I probably don't do as much with DoorDash, and maybe not as much as I could, but there's too many times where you chase that carrot and you end up with a $3 payoff because that's what they told you you're going to get. So that's the one thing that sometimes is kind of that little guessing game with DoorDash when it comes to getting paid. Let's talk about getting paid. Let's talk about that pay model with DoorDash, because with DoorDash, there's no pay model. There is no pay model. Now, DoorDash is going to tell you that what they do is they offer, there's a base pay, there's your delivery pay, and then there's a customer tip. And it's those two things, and sometimes an incentive or what they call peak pay that they'll add to that. But most of the time it's what DoorDash is paying you and then the customer tip, and that's what you will get. DoorDash will tell you that they calculate that DoorDash delivery fee based on distance and time, and DoorDash is lying. They are flat out lying to you. I can tell you that because I have seen way too many $2 orders that they give you a $2 offer and you're going 8 miles. There is no way in hell that you can calculate time and distance into an 8-mile delivery and come up with $2. What that tells you is that whatever they come up with for the delivery fee is arbitrary. It is whatever they feel like they can get away with paying. And if they can get by with $2 or $3 and they think somebody will take it at that, they'll offer it for that. If they're having trouble getting deliveries taken, then they might make it $4 or $5, especially if the customer hasn't tipped. So there's no model. It's kind of more this, whatever their algorithm says is, hey, what is it going to take to get somebody to take this delivery? And so the thing is you get a choice to accept or reject it. And, and so there's kind of a cat and mouse between couriers and DoorDash about this whole thing about getting those deliveries accepted. But what I have found with DoorDash is that it seems like anything above $4 for the delivery fee is rare, even on long deliveries. That's my experience anyway. Now, maybe part of that is because I won't chase those long deliveries because of my 50-cent rule, DoorDash will throw out some incentives, and sometimes they're really good, and sometimes it's more deception. And I've told you I don't trust DoorDash. How do I know that DoorDash is lying? Their lips are moving. That's how I know. Anyway, DoorDash, I will say that they are probably one of the best apps out there if they really need people out there, they'll pay for it. If things are really busy, the weather's bad, there are other things that are just kind of making it hard for them to get things, they will bump up what they call peak pay. And I've made as much as $12 extra per delivery, and sometimes when it's at $12 per delivery, and I am just, I'm driving all over the place because it's just like order after order after order because they're just that busy. And so with that peak pay, what they do is, and a lot of times they kind of schedule it ahead of times, and usually when they do that, it's maybe $1 or $2 that they'll add on to the order. And sometimes it's responsive. It's based on weather. It's based on circumstances around there that might be getting in the way with getting food delivered or something like that. And so that's one good thing that, when things are really busy, a lot of times DoorDash is the best place to go deliver. There are other times where they'll throw out $5 or $6 peak pay, and I will stay away from that particular zone. Because what they've done is they created a vacuum. They throw out, let's say downtown is $6, everywhere around there is $2. So all the drivers are flocking into downtown to get that $6 peak pay. And what they've done is they've created a vacuum in these other zones. And so I'm not getting as much per delivery, but I'm not waiting for deliveries either in the neighboring zone. So, you kind of play that game by watching the peak pay and deciding where you're going to get the best offers and where you're going to stay busy. One area where DoorDash can be really deceptive is some of the guarantees that they offer. They'll throw out an offer where they say, go do 150 deliveries and you can earn as much as $1,000. So people think they're getting a $1,000 bonus. They go out and they complete their 150 deliveries and it's like, where's my money? There is no money because in those 150 deliveries, they made more than $1,000 already. All DoorDash is saying when they do that is they're saying, if you don't make at least $1,000 in those 150 deliveries, we'll make up the difference. It's not a bonus. And they know, I guarantee that they know that people are thinking that that's a bonus. And they're not setting the record straight because if people think it's a bonus, they go after it and they don't care. That's my opinion. Anyway, I think they're intentionally deceptive that way. But the thing is when you get offers from any of these companies, you got to read them like a lawyer. Because they're written by lawyers, and every word matters. And when it says at least, you got to understand that at least does not mean bonus. When you get a promise from DoorDash, read it carefully. They won't outright lie, but they can sure spin it to make it look like something that it's not, and they will do it. So how many times do people fall for that, though? And I think it's a stupid thing if you're playing the long game. Because it's like the boy who cried wolf. How many times do you promise something or you make it look like you're promising something and then you say, yeah, but look at how I said that. I didn't say that we're giving you this bonus. And after a while, people quit believing and they quit doing anything, So I think that's the kind of thing that can backfire. Anyway, how does the pay with DoorDash stack up? And I think the answer to that is going to be based on where you are, how busy the different apps are. There's some places DoorDash might be the best game in town. In my area, and based on the way that I do things, DoorDash is number 3 right now. And they might be number 4 if I wasn't stuck on not doing Postmates. I've got a grudge right now with Postmates. But out of the 3 that I deliver, DoorDash right now has been at the bottom. But here's something that I will say. And that is that a year ago, there is no way I would have believed you if you told me that Uber Eats was the one that I'm doing most of my deliveries with. And right now, they are far and away the dominant moneymaker for me right now. So things can change, Everybody kind of changes. Some things get better, some things get worse. And let me put it this way. I went a couple days ago and I had 17 offers in a row that I rejected all of them. I told you about my 50-cent rule, I recorded each one of those, and I went back and I looked at each one, and I kind of estimated how many minutes do I think this delivery is going to take. Not a single one of those deliveries came anywhere close to 50. There was one that came in at about 43 cents a minute, I think is what I estimated, and only one delivery out of those 17 was paying more than $9. And the way that those, just looking at those deliveries, maybe 2 of those might have had an extra pay beyond that. Maybe, It's a guessing game there. And then, out of those 17 deliveries, 7 out of 17 were 11 miles or more total driving. And it was all like just ridiculous offer after ridiculous offer. And that's the thing that I think is just my experience has been. DoorDash has been kind of the worst right now at what their payouts are. I can go out and I can average $30 an hour right now on Grubhub and Uber Eats. And with DoorDash, I can't even get a single delivery that's $30 an hour. So, that's the thing that is what stands out to me. Now, how much of that is because of me? How much of that is because of what I'm doing? And maybe, part of it is I don't get as good an offer because I reject so many offers. DoorDash kind of dangles that idea out there. They don't flat out say it. So it's possible. But, does that make it worth chasing some of these other offers? I'll get into that a little more because I'm going to talk about something called Top Dasher. What I will tell you is that the one good thing with DoorDash is offers are steady. I think I see fewer gaps in between offers with DoorDash. And in fact, sometimes with DoorDash, it can be just rapid fire. You turn one down and right away you got another one, turn that down, and it could be 5, 6, 7 deliveries right in a row. And usually when it's just that quick and it's just like boom, 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 you're likely to find something good. So that's a good thing with DoorDash and stuff like that. You throw out a few extra thoughts on DoorDash just off the top of my mind. And let's talk about that Top Dasher that I just mentioned. DoorDash has a thing that they call Top Dasher status. And it gives you these perks that if you meet these criteria at the end of the month, you could be Top Dasher for the next month. And to achieve Top Dasher status right now, I think it's that you've got to be at a 70% acceptance rate by the end of the month, 95% completion rate, and you have to have had 100 deliveries for the month and at least 200 deliveries lifetime. And I will probably never be Top Dasher as long as those are the criteria. I just won't. And I don't have a problem with the 95% completion rate. You know what? If you're paying attention to the deliveries, you shouldn't be accepting something that you're going to unassign. And that's what completion rate is all about. If you accept something and then you decide to cancel out of that, that goes against your completion rate. And sometimes you get one where the restaurant is just going to be a ridiculous wait that you hadn't anticipated that would be. Sometimes you just get those circumstances and you decide not to do it. 70% acceptance rate, though, to me, that's a big problem. I mean, you know what? If there's 17 orders in a row that I'm not going to take, you can guess that I'm not going to be at 70% acceptance rate. So if you meet all of that, your main perk is that then you can go in and you can dash now at any time, whether or not there's a schedule slot available at any location, any zone, wherever you want. So basically, you can log in, log out wherever you are without any problem. And that kind of makes it more like Uber Eats and Postmates, That is, to me, that's a substantial benefit. But the question you've got to ask is it worth it? And like I said, I put an article where I talked in more depth about whether Top Dasher is worth it. To me, the loss of pay that comes with taking 70% of the offers, it's not even close to being worth it. It just isn't. And even if that means that I can't get on a schedule because everything is all booked up, the fact that all the other apps are paying so much better than what I would make at that 70% acceptance rate says it's not worth it to me. You might be in an area where it's a different story. So, you got to kind of make those decisions. A couple other thoughts real quick. The smaller zones. There's some things I like about it and there's some things I don't. The zones are smaller, so you log into a smaller area, and that can be a blessing and a curse. At least in theory it can be a blessing. I'm not sure it really is. I know a lot of people will tell me they like that about the smaller zones because it means you've got a lot less driving. Like I said, when 7 out of 17 offers that I had, when I tracked every single one of them, when 7 out of 17 were 11 miles or more, that's telling me you're not really driving a whole lot less. And the problem with that is, let's say you take one of those deliveries, well, now you've gone several miles outside of your zone. So what happens? You've got to double back. And so you've got to kind of double back to get back within your zone to get orders. Sometimes you'll get offers outside of that area. It just depends on how busy things are in other areas. Or you got to log off your schedule and hope that there's a schedule slot available in the zone you ended up in to be able to dash now in the zone that you just dropped off at. You see what I'm saying there? And so to me, I don't know. I find that the smaller zones are far less efficient, and I don't like it as much. That's me. One other thing I want to bring up is kind of this pressure machine that is Doordash lately. Doordash has a way of micromanaging the deliveries. So when you pick up an order, they'll pop up a screen and they want you to check off every menu item. Well, especially these days, the restaurants are, they're doing, no contact or low contact, and they're putting the food in sealed bags. So yeah, in the first place, even before they started doing that, I did not go through the food. I would not go through the food to check off whether stuff is in there because if I'm doing a delivery, I do not want that delivery person going through my food. I don't know if they've washed their hands. They don't have a food handler's permit, any of that stuff. I don't want them going through my food, and I will not go through somebody else's food, whether or not DoorDash wants me to check off if that food is available. And with more restaurants wanting to set the food out, trying to confirm with the restaurant, hey, is this, and this in there? Half the time I'm just marking them off. I'm taking them at their word. The fact that they put the food out there, I'm taking them at their word that it's there. It's on the restaurant. It should be on the restaurant. That's their job to do that. My job is to pick up the food and deliver it. So that's one thing. They'll kick out a lot of texts. Sometimes they'll say, you don't appear to be heading there, or are you there at the restaurant yet? Or just a lot of these little things that'll pop up like that. But you know what? I get it. I understand it. Because here's the deal. I think that the reason that Grubhub lost their lead in market share and the reason that they have dropped so far is that the delivery experience has been terrible for their customers. And Grubhub doesn't really push that experience as far as the driver is concerned. There's no reward and there's no consequence for good or bad service with Grubhub. With DoorDash, there's a rating system. There are a few more things that they walk you through to try and make sure that the food's there, that that you're getting the food there on time. So, I think they kind of push the envelope a little bit as far as micromanaging, but I think they do a better job at trying to make sure that the delivery experience is good for the customer. The other part of the pressure machine with with DoorDash has been they've been doing a lot of deactivations. Part of that is because I think that they over-contracted during the pandemic. They opened the floodgates, and now that things are slowing down, they've got to thin out the herd. So they've been going back and they've been deactivating people because their new background check showed something that for some reason they didn't pay attention to when they originally ran a background check. They will deactivate you if you have less than an 80% completion rate. They recently bumped that threshold up from 70%. And they'll deactivate you if you have less than a 4.2 customer satisfaction rating. Both of those things, there's a big enough margin that I'm not worried about those things. I think the problem is that DoorDash isn't real good with their statistics. Their app glitches a lot on those metrics. I have been on the exact same on-time ratio and the exact same completion rate for 3 months now. It hasn't changed at all. That's impossible. When that's based on the last 100 deliveries, that's just impossible, And so there's something that's not quite right there. And when it comes to the customer rating, when the driver can get blamed for things outside of their control, to me, there's a problem. Although 4.2 is like a really low bar. So either one of those, I don't think it's too big of a deal. But the thing is I just see a lot of people that they're kind of stressed out by all of these different things and by this threat of deactivation. And so that is, I think sometimes that's part of the experience with DoorDash. That it's one of the reasons I've been enjoying it now that Uber Eats has become a viable option because there's a lot more freedom. Last thing I want to bring up, don't forget Door Crash Fridays. Their app sucks. If you've never delivered for DoorDash, just be ready. It's going to crash on you. And it's going to crash when you need it the most. It will crash usually on a Friday night when things are really busy. And I don't know how they stay in business when they crash during their busiest period as often as they do, and such a widespread issue as it is. They've just got problems with that, and they should have redesigned that thing a long time ago. But that's just DoorDash. And so, that's something to be ready for. And there go the dogs again. Final thoughts as I wrap things up. I did not expect that I would be taking as long on these particular episodes as I would, but I think it's that, I got so many opinions on all these companies that this is short compared to the first two takes, okay? As things stand right now, I could not do DoorDash as my primary form of earnings. There are some people that's all they do with DoorDash, and they do pretty well, and even in my market, and I give them credit. They're doing something great that I'm not doing right. Kind of hard to admit that maybe you're not doing some things right. I don't know. And maybe it's just my style doesn't work as well with DoorDash as some other folks do. But to me, I can't stick with anyone and rely on just one company. I think it's foolish to try it, honestly. But having said that, like I said, when I did the series last fall, I never would have guessed that Uber Eats would be where it was. Uber Eats back last fall was about where Postmates is for me right now. So things change. Sometimes the market forces the change. Sometimes the company comes around, and that's what happened with Uber Eats. I don't have a lot of faith in DoorDash coming around, but you never know, So, the thing is, ultimately, the information that DoorDash provides is fantastic. The earnings can be good. And especially when things are really busy, DoorDash can be a great place to go. If you go out and do bike deliveries, I think DoorDash is great. They handle the bike delivery side better than anybody. At the same time, the lack of reliability in the apps, that's a problem. Some of the stuff with their pricing, and really they try and get away with paying less than anybody else, and that's a problem. And so the thing is, there's some stuff that I love about DoorDash. There's stuff that I just really hate. It just drives me crazy. And there are times where I would just almost say, you know what? DoorDash is like Postmates to me. I'm done with them. The thing is, they're the main player. They're the leader out there. They've got more deliveries than anybody else. I think my guess is Uber Eats is going to catch them. That's just my prediction. I see how serious they've been at making improvements, and I think you're going to see it play out. But that's just my speculation. But the thing is when they are where they are, you want to keep them in the arsenal. You don't want to burn the bridge there. The micromanaging, it can be irritating, but I think that's one of the reasons that they moved to the front of the class, that they focus more on delivering and actually creating a good customer experience. And that's part of why they do the micromanaging. And so I think that's going to keep them in the lead for a while. In the end, they're like everybody else. I love them. I hate them. The beauty is we're independent contractors. So we can choose the things we love about one, and we choose the things we love about another, and we work with them together. We get to make the decisions. And as I wrap up, that's kind of what I always wrap up with, is you get to make the decisions. That's what I encourage you to do. Be the boss.